The story begins with the arrest of a group of illegal immigrants crossing the US-Mexico border. In this case, the CIA cooperates with special forces in border areas. But as the immigrants gathered, one man fled into the valley. When he was on the edge of the abyss, he opened his bag and put a bomb in it. The man prayed for a while before detonating the bomb. An Arab and 4 security personnel were killed. Therefore, the US government immediately dispatched special forces to investigate the incident. Meanwhile, a suspicious group breaks into a grocery store in Kansas City. Then suddenly, several bombs exploded in the grocery store. Like the man who died at the edge of the abyss, the bombers prayed before blowing themselves up and before blowing up the people around them. U.S. Secretary of Defense James Riley finally delivered a speech amid the ongoing terrorist attacks. He threatens terrorists and promises to catch them as soon as possible. On the other hand, there was Matt Graver, the most vicious CIA agent. This time he and his forces are deployed to the Gulf of Somalia. Your mission was to take down a criminal group hiding in a remote area. The next day, Matt interrogates a criminal leader named Bashir. Mr. Bashir initially refused to acknowledge his ties to the Yemeni man who detonated the bomb in Kansas. But Matt knew that Bashir was the one who allowed the terrorists to enter Mexico. Then Bashir asked who paid for it. Unfortunately, this man didn't want to reveal anything. Because of this, Matt had to defeat Bashir's brother. Not long after that, Matt finally got the information from Bashir. Somalis say these terrorists have something to do with Carlos Reyes. At the time, he was the most powerful cartel mafia in Mexico. Elsewhere, we meet an unstable teenager named Miguel. He lives in the border area and often skips school. He is with his cousin Hector every day. But one day, Miguel is invited to join the cartel where Hector works. He also wants to get paid to join the organization. The scene switches to show Matt Graver already in the US. He wasted no time and went straight to James. At the time, he was accompanied by department official Cynthia Fords. When Matt entered the room, James immediately started the meeting. According to him, the Mexican drug cartels are the real terrorists. They use other terrorists to wreak havoc on America. This is to facilitate smuggling. To solve this problem, Matt devised an outrageous plan. He will lead Mexico's 2 largest cartels into conflict. These 2 cartels of his are the ones led by Matamoros and Carlos Reyes. In order for this plan to proceed, it was necessary to kidnap Carlos' youngest daughter Isabel. Everyone who heard it was shocked because it was too dangerous a strategy. But again, they didn't have a choice, so James ordered Matt to play dirty, but on one condition. James asks Matt not to use American Special Forces, which means Matt must hire mercenaries to carry out this mission. At night, Matt encounters a third party named Troy who hires mercenaries and weapons. He will pay a high price, as all costs will be covered by the ministry. Matt then immediately flies to Bogota to see his best friend Alejandro, Latin America's deadliest assassin. Matt is soon told that the target this time is Carlos Reyes. The reason Matt invited him to participate is that Carlos was also involved in the massacre of Alejandro's family. If Carlos Reyes dies, his revenge will pay off. To start this dispute, Alejandro decides to dismiss the Matamoros cartel lawyer. Before Alejandro kills the lawyer, he orders him to wear glasses so that he can see his face clearly. After the lawyer put on his glasses, Alejandro shot him very brutally. Rumors quickly spread because of this sadistic murder. While people keep an eye on the news, Matt and his team continue their mission to kidnap Isabel. Isabel, on the other hand, is still at school. And she grows up to be a cheeky girl just like her father. Almost every day she argues with her classmates. In fact, the teacher was very stressed and exhausted when Isabel caused trouble. However, no matter how serious the problem was, the school did not dare to expel Isabel. The victim was bleeding but was still safe thanks to her father. When the school bell rang, Isabel was immediately picked up by her bodyguards. However, they were unaware that Matt Graver and his team were targeting them. First, Matt blocked all signals in the area. Matt then blocks Isabel's car. Matt and the others then rush to kidnap Isabel. They put the girl in the car and covered her head. Meanwhile, Alejandro awakens one of Isabel's bodyguards. The guard reported this to Carlos Reyes, as he was pretending to be a member of the Matamoros cartel. Matt kept an eye on Carlos' house. A gunfight, allegedly carried out by his men, broke out near this location. Matt orders the Tupper team to find Carlos' whereabouts. Alejandro took Isabel to a safe house while Matt was busy in the communications room. But Isabel is still invisible, so Alejandro orders her men to lock her girl in her room. Alejandro then continues his mission by pretending to be an American police officer. In carrying out his duties, he worked closely with the local police. In this way, Isabel will think she has been kidnapped by the Matamoros cartel. In addition, Alejandro carries out procedures similar to those of ordinary police. He takes Isabel to safety and interrogates her. Alejandro will continue to do this until Matt gives further instructions. Before continuing their mission, Matt and Alejandro seek help from their old friend Rafael. Here, Matt plans to bring Isabel near the Matamoros cartel base. He wanted to make sure there was a war going on between the two largest cartels. When Rafael heard this, he was ready to help them. After the meeting, Matt tried to leave, but his car nearly hit Miguel in the parking lot. Then Alejandro saw his eyes. Miguel then realizes that the car belongs to the American police. That night, Miguel leaves for Mexico with Hector. There he met his senior Garo of Matamoros. Hector invites Miguel there, officially making Miguel a member of the cartel. Elsewhere, Isabel will soon be deported to the Matamoros region. Alejandro gave this girl a bulletproof vest to keep her from getting hurt. After all preparations were completed, the transfer process was carried out. Along the way, according to their plan, the situation appeared to be under control. No other gang stopped them, thanks to the help of Rafael, who agreed to cooperate with the Mexican police. However, Isabel was suspicious of Matt. It also does not stop at the border and passes through dirt roads. Shortly after, Matt and Alejandro's team is raided by federal police. They seem to have been paid for by Carlos Reyes. Like it or not, Matt and Alejandro had to get out of the car to fight. Isabel, on the other hand, took advantage of this moment to escape. Ultimately, Matt's team successfully contained the attackers. It turns out that they were all Carlos' men who intentionally hijacked the police car. So Matt beat them without hesitation. Afterwards, Alejandro decides to look for Isabel, who has fled. Matt and his men report this to headquarters. But before that, Matt gave Alejandro a tracking chip so he could help Alejandro if needed. While Alejandro was looking for Isabel, Matt was again stopped by a Mexican police car and, disgusted, did not hesitate to shoot her dead. And finally, Matt and his team managed to return home to the United States. Meanwhile, Isabel asks for help from someone crossing a deserted road, but it turns out that her father's man was driving her car. But Isabel didn't want to take her home even though she was forced to. And Alejandro immediately paralyzed the man. Alejandro then got in the car and took Isabel to safety. At this point Isabel already knew that it was Alejandro who had kidnapped her. The scene then shifts to a military base where Matt and Cynthia are arguing. Matt was furious that her surgery was suddenly cancelled by the Ministry of Health. All of this happened because Matt's team killed a Mexican police officer, which made national headlines and forced the government to call off the operation. The mission was not cancelled, so Alejandro was still in Mexico with Isabel. And due to the hot weather, I decided to ask the residents for help. After a while they met a deaf angel who was really kind. Luckily, Alejandro was able to communicate in sign language, so Angel thought Alejandro was a good person. At the same time, the ministry held an emergency meeting with Matt's assistants Matt, Cynthia, and Steve Forsing. This time, Isabel had to be arrested immediately because the girl had previously witnessed the shooting. But this mission is not led by Matt. Instead, the Pentagon gave Cynthia full control and immediately ordered Matt and his team to search for Isabel when the tracking device was activated. But Matt seems suspicious, not wanting to ruin Alejandro's mission of revenge. If he kills Isabel, his best friend will never get revenge. Elsewhere, Isabel is eating food cooked by Angel and his wife. Meanwhile, Alejandro receives a phone call from Matt and tells him to kill Isabel. However, Alejandro refused, still wanting to kill Carlos Reyes. Meanwhile, the Matamoros cartel is once again secretly smuggling illegal immigrants. But this time they sent Miguel as a guide. And this was his first job after joining the cartel. Illegal immigrants cross bushes and rivers and finally reach their destination. From here it will be transported by truck. At the same time, Alejandro prepares his weapons to cross the border. This is the only way to know Carlos Reyes. As Alejandro is preoccupied with himself, Isabel suddenly announces that she knows who he really is, and that she also knows her father was behind the Alejandro family massacre. But she didn't want to defend her father. After all, Isabel wants to help Alejandro. For that, she had to disguise herself by cutting her hair and changing her name to Karina. Without wasting any more time, Alejandro and Isabel headed for the border. Alejandro also activated a tracking chip in Isabel's shoe. He did so because he was sure Matt would help him. Soon after, Alejandro and Isabel finally make it to the illegal immigration post. This post was controlled by Matamoros' cartel. Matt and his team are elsewhere preparing to go to Alejandro's house. They used helicopters to avoid detection by the Mexican police. After a while, Alejandro was contacted by Hector asking for payment. Alejandro then handed over $1,000. Initially, Alejandro's plan went according to plan. However, it all goes awry as Miguel happens to see Alejandro's face and panics because he has met Alejandro before. He immediately reports to Hector that Alejandro is a police officer. So Hector pretends to take Alejandro to the border, but when they arrive at a deserted place, Hector and others turn their guns on Alejandro. They then searched Alejandro and seized all of his weapons. Also, they let Isabel off the bus while Alejandro decided to negotiate with Gallo in an attempt to keep his cool. Alejandro claims to be Carlos Reyes' man who wants to bring Isabel home. If he fails, a war between the cartels is sure to break out and Matamoros could be devastated. However, Gallo does not believe Alejandro's words and decides to beat him. Alejandro and Isabel are then taken to a secluded location. At the same time, the location of Matt and his team is still too far. Long story short, Gallo ordered his host to shoot Alejandro. But he didn't have the courage to kill anyone, so Gallo shot Jose. Gallo then gave the gun to Miguel. The boy accepted this and quickly shot Alejandro dead. After his death was confirmed, Gallo and his men abandoned Alejandro in the middle of the desert. Meanwhile, Matt witnesses the murder through security cameras. He couldn't contain his grief. Enraged, Matt finally orders the team to take out Gallo and all of his men. On the way to the cartel's headquarters, Miguel decides to descend. He felt very guilty about killing people. But to my surprise, Alejandro's body suddenly moved. It turns out that the killer wasn't dead yet, as Miguel shot him in the cheek instead of the head. Shortly after, the helicopter manages to encircle Gallo's group, and Matt and his team waste no time in immediately attacking them blindly. After brutally slaughtering her, Matt decides not to kill her, even if it wasn't on Cynthia's orders, to put Isabel in her witness protection. Conclusion: in a harrowing tale of terrorism, revenge, and cartel conflicts, an intricate web of events unfolds as CIA agent Matt Graver and lethal assassin Alejandro navigate a world of danger and deceit. As alliances shift and violence escalates, their pursuit of justice becomes a tumultuous journey that ultimately intertwines the fate of an unlikely teenager, Miguel, with their mission to dismantle the powerful cartels that threaten both Mexico and the United States.